Hello everyone and welcome back to the Road to Rotation. Here we have, unfortunately, one of the hardest leaders to make these videos about, just because this leader has never really had an identity of its own and has never seen any competitive play in any real sense, because it's always been a worse option of something that already existed. But we have the ST08 mono black Luffy. He has 5,000 power and 5 life. And his ability is your turn. When a character is KO'd, give up to 1 Rested Dawn card to this leader. So based on just the leader ability alone, it seems like you want to be running some sort of kind of tempo-y based, remove what they play, and then get in swings. And hopefully, if you can get in multiple KOs, get some extra value out of Luffy here. As far as cards that are kind of uniquely interesting in him, there aren't a lot. I have Brook here because he's a Straw Hat Crew character, so he does kind of fit in here in at least a thematic sense, but he doesn't have any inherent synergy other than just being KO, which is repeatable, which is a pretty good place to be. The next card here actually does work specifically with this Black Luffy in a way it doesn't work with every leader, and that's this Robin. Who, if your leader is Koala or Luffy, it gains blocker and +3 cost, so it can be a pretty potent blocker that's hard to remove. And then it also has a nice on play of you may trash 1 card from your hand. If your opponent has 5 or more cards in their hand, your opponent trashes 2 from their hand, which can be pretty good at removing cards from their board. And the final one, which again doesn't work with a ton of different leaders, is the Thousand Sunny. As a way to kind of protect your Straw Hat Crew type cards. And because you're a leader of Straw Hat Crew, you get to draw a card, and so it replaces itself. Unfortunately, that is really it that really synergizes with this leader. So the next category I have here is just kind of generic good black cards. Because we are in that removal mode where we're trying to get KOs on our opponents, we have to have 2 things. We have to have the cost reduction through cards like this Uta, which happen to come from the same starter deck. It's one of probably the best card from that starter deck. And this Uta being really good if you can set up your removal engine early by making it to where your opponent can't swing into it with their leader effectively. So if you KO all of their bodies and they don't have rush, then this will just keep sticking around, giving you -2 every turn. Other ones we have are the classic Hina. Brook gives a little bit of cost minus, but that's not his main feature. Then we have Laboon and Kuzan. These 2 are pretty common staples in this sort of deck. Actually, all 3 of these really. And then we have Shirahoshi as another way of reducing costs for KOs. And this is probably the second best card in that starter deck. This one is a blocker, 4 cost, 0 power, 1k counter. Blocker with on play, give up to one of your opponent's characters -4 cost during this turn. So cheap enough to be a blocker and then also fit on a turn with maybe a Brook or something else. After you have all of your cost minusing, you will also need to be adding in some removal. So the removal cards that I was highlighting here are Brook, and let me actually go find Lucci because he's probably also worth mentioning on here. Brook as a KO engine that is constantly coming back, and Lucci as one that can KO twice, which would put 2 Rested Dawn on your leader, which is pretty reasonable. After that, we have Jack, who's a pretty good, kind of hard to out engine card. Who can every turn kind of deal with a single body on the board while also giving you a little bit of card selection. So those are all your main removal options. A newer one that this deck has probably never seen before is the St. Marcus Mars, who is a bit expensive for his cost, but it does let you get rid of a base 5 cost or less, which means it doesn't work with the cost reduction, but it can get rid of some things that are pesky that raise their own powers. So definitely an option if you're interested. And then later in the game, it does turn into a blocker, which can be pretty useful. The final one I wanted to call out is the Stussy, as a way of dealing with pretty much anything on the board. And if you have anything that's stuck around, maybe a spare Hina or something like that that you need to get back into the yard, you can KO it with the Stussy. Also noted on the leader ability here, it doesn't say whose character. So if you're using Stussy to KO your, no, this one, it doesn't work because it's trash, but something that is close to working, and there's actually a few Dressrosa cards that do KO your own guys, but the whole engine doesn't work very well, so I didn't want to highlight it here. But something to watch out in the future. If they ever in the Eternal format give us cards that KO friendly cards, it would work with this with the Luffy leader. But Stussy nonetheless is a strong card at removing kind of big top end cards that it would be really hard for you to get rid of otherwise. The other cards I wanted to call out in this kind of generic black thing are Rebecca, for the classic Rebecca Hina, and then either Brook or Lucci gameplay, especially when you have a Kuzan on the board. You can get a lot of KO off of a single Rebecca in ways that are hard for your opponent to play around. So just be aware that if you are going for the KO thing on this leader, Rebecca is almost certainly going to be a core piece of it, and is just a good value piece otherwise. After the banning of Moria, this deck doesn't have necessarily a strong top end, so you're probably relying on stuff like Stussy and Jack as your top end, as well as some of your removal. And you might just be swinging with lead a bit more in this leader rather than trying to synergize with any top end. And then finally, the last card I wanted to call out, and this is just a great black card in general, is Ground Death, as a way to kind of get around blockers or just be a 4K counter. This card kind of does it all for what we would want in a black deck. So because this leader didn't have a whole lot, this is pretty much the cards that I wanted to go over. I'm going to hop over to the sim real quick and give you guys a sample deck list, and then we'll wrap up with this video. All right, so here we have our sample list for it. This is a very generic black removal deck. We've got our Brooks and Rebecca and Hina as our main removal engine. The other cards that I added in for removal are the Jack, and I found this Luffy here, which I thought would be interesting. I wanted something around the 5 cost that had counter, because I'm running Kuzan and Hina and Jack and Stussy and the Nico Robin. I had a lot of non-counter, so I wanted to find something with counter that could do some KO, and I found this one, which seems like it could be a fun little addition. Because I'm running also so many non-counters, I picked up the 0 cost event for black. Other than that, we have a couple Stussy, Ground Death, and our 2Ks of Suru, Bartolomeo, and this Sabo. This Sabo I found interesting because if you can get up to 15 cards in trash, then the Rebecca can both get it back from the trash and play it out rested. So a 6K body that you can play out off of Rebecca is kind of unique, not something you see every day. This deck does not fill the trash super well, so don't expect to use this ability very often, but it is a niche little interaction, and if it's going to be just a 2K mostly anyways, it doesn't matter that much which one you pick. But that was it for this list for this week. Next week, we will be going into the last starter deck of our series, which is the Mono Yellow Yamato from ST09. That one is interesting. There was a very small window of time where it was considered a consideration, but it never quite took off. So that one will be interesting to look at as kind of a generic yellow leader way back. But I hope you guys are looking forward to that, and I will see you guys next week. Talk to you then, and bye.